So welcome to this webinar. I'm going to talk to you about the first call for business experiments, which address uptake of HPC by SMEs. And I'll explain a little bit more about the project background, the approach that Fortissimo has, and explain the different sort of open calls that we have ongoing at the moment. So after that introduction to the Fortissimo approach and the project, FFplus project, I'm going to focus on the first type of sub-project that we're covering by this specific sub-call of the Open Call 1. And this is for the business experiments, and I'll explain the objectives that we have, the expectations that the project has for proposals, and funding and eligibility conditions. And I'll finish off with some summary of information sources and the submission procedure before we go into a Q&A session. So as Tina mentioned, the Fortissimo projects have been going on for some time now. The first two, which were coordinated by EPCC in Edinburgh, were run under the 7th framework program and then Horizon 2020. So they started 2013-16, and then there was actually an overlap, which is here. Fortissimo 2 overlapped with Fortissimo. And an interesting point is that these were funded as part of the action called I4MS, ICT Innovation for Manufacturing SMEs. And this was part of a funding program for the Factories of the Future initiative. So it went back to some political or the financial situations, and the European Commission wanted to support manufacturing industries in particular and manufacturing SMEs. So there was particularly a focus on manufacturing SMEs, which stayed for some time. We were at that time looking at simulation services provided via an HPC cloud facility, but the focus is actually important. It was HPC, using HPC. And as you see from the picture down there, there was a lot of political interest in the project. That picture is, I think it's a Lamborghini, and Monsieur Bernier, who was involved in the Brexit discussions at the industry fair in Hanover. And there was a lot of interest in why are we doing this? Why are we making supercomputers accessible for industry and SMEs? And of course, the key thing was the business case. So what you'll keep saying is the emphasis on business cases, business potential. So that was an important issue. We were performing what we call business experiments with SMEs and targeting their real business challenges. So it's not about research context. It's about using HPC to solve a business problem or a business challenge. And the bulk of the funding is used for these experiments. And they're centered around highest quality, innovative SME experiences and needs. And what we discovered was that the best way to get those high quality experiments was to use open calls with proposals. So the first two Fortissimo projects executed 92 experiments, and they generated almost 80 impressive business-oriented success stories. And I'll show a little bit about that, what the sort of expectations of success stories later. And if you're interested, all the success stories from the first two projects are available through this booklet via the previous Fortissimo website. And when we talk about business-oriented success stories, we're looking for the sort of the statements about not how we did it, but what it meant. So we're not looking to represent scalability plots or parallel performance efficiency. We're looking at what did it mean for your company. And in this case, this was a success story that won a prize from the IDC HPC Innovation Award in 2016. And they could show that the use of HPC led to operational savings, better operational costs. Or a classic area of HPC is CFD, and this was a sports car from Koenigsegg. Quite extreme conditions they were looking at, but the real story is that they could reduce design costs, they could reduce wind tunnel testing, reduce prototyping costs, and reduce the time to market. These are the issues we're looking at. Then we moved ahead with FF HPC, and here you see the overall statistics. This project ran from 2020 to 2023. We had a small number of project partners, 6 of the 7 that we have now, and we actually executed 42 experiments. Total funding budget was 8 million, and that led to experiments with over 118 organizations and 22 countries. And as I mentioned earlier, there was still a focus on manufacturing. So we still had an emphasis on manufacturing SMEs, which is no longer the case with FFplus. So just to flag that. We had a very good distribution of participants around the Europe and at that time the Euro HPC JU member states. UK was still involved at that point. And as you can see from these pictures show you the sort of themes we had in the 2 calls that were executed. So a mixture, actually, a lot in call 2, we had an emphasis on manufacturing. That was a priority set. But you see under manufacturing quite a range of different industrial sectors. But complementing that, activities in agriculture or in human health. And then a mixture of the classical modeling and simulation, like couple simulations, but also data analytics and moving into AI applications. I've chosen some of the success stories. They're all of the 42 success stories available on the website. What I did was search for the term AI. So you see that they're already in FF for HPC. AI or machine learning were technologies being used to address SME benefits, business challenges. And if you follow the link on there, you'll get to the brochure I showed earlier, or the website with the success stories. So we had a booklet with individual flyers for each of the success stories. And the booklet is shown here. But we also had a number of really very interesting videos explaining a bit more about the background of the problems and the impact that the use of HPC had for the businesses involved. And I would invite you to have a look at some of those. We will in the future be targeting production of further videos coming from FFplus. So speaking of FFplus, these are the objectives. We want to empower SMEs with advanced computational capabilities. So as I said, we're looking to solve their business challenges. What's new, and that's why it's called FFplus, is that we have both the classical Fortissimo business experiments addressing the uptake of HPC by SMEs. The emphasis this time is on SMEs that are new to using HPC. But then we also have these innovation studies. We name them differently to distinguish between the two. And these innovation studies have more a development focus. So we're supporting European SMEs and startups that are already active in the field of generative AI that have competences in using HPC, but they lack the large-scale resources to be able to move their technology forward. So those innovation studies are looking to help them develop their generative AI tools and services. For that, then we'll be executing 6 open calls. We'll have 3 tranches. So 3 tranches of 2 calls. We will have then 3 calls for business experiments and 3 for the innovation studies. And the total budget for funding these will be is over 24 million. Tina's already mentioned this. The project started in May. It's got a 4-year duration. It's funded by the the Euro HPC JU under the Digital Europe funding program. The coordinator, as was the case for FFU HPC, is HLRS, University of Stuttgart. The partners are a mixture of SMEs like Scapos or tech organizations like TerraTech, HPC centers, and what's new to the team is CypherNet in Poland. So we have a compact team to operate the calls, to manage the project, and to support the experiments and studies, and of course handle the communication dissemination. But the bulk of the activities within the project will be performed by the experiments and the innovation studies. So if you go onto the FFplus website, you will find this site, this subpage, where you can move ahead to submit a proposal to the open call. There will be 2 distinct boxes you can click on, and I'm going to be talking today about the business experiments. So I'm not going to cover the details or the expectations of the innovation studies. That's going to be handled in a separate webinar. So we call it, very boring title, FFplus Call 1 Type 1, but as I said, it's the first call for business experiments addressing uptake of HPC by SMEs. The deadline is September 4th at 1700 Brussels time. The expected duration of the experiments will be 15 months, which is similar to an FF for Euro HPC. And we hope to have the experiments starting in January 2025. For this call, the indicative total funding budget for all the business experiments is 4 million euros. We have a specific definition of main participant SME in the first open call, and that is the SME that comes with the business challenge or drives the technology development in the others. So, and they're only able or eligible to participate in one type of sub-project. So it's either the business experiments that I'm talking about now or the innovation studies, but not both. So we're looking for SMEs that are new to the use of HPC. That means they should have had no prior use of or experience with HPC. And we're looking to solve their business challenges through HPC. There is the intention that the SME that's involved surely benefits from the participation. So the exploitation by the SME is important, that the business benefit for that SME is important. But the key thing that we want are the success stories, because our key output is the set of success stories that allow us to reach out to the overall SME ecosystem to say, look, these SMEs were able to gain real advantage by the use of HPC. You could too. So we're actually trying to promote the uptake of HPC throughout the SME ecosystem. This time, as already mentioned, we are not focusing on manufacturing. We're open for varied application domains, but we will, of course, give priority for the highest business impact. So when it comes down to comparing different proposals, business impact is extremely important. We've prioritized. We are not looking for research-oriented SMEs. So SMEs that really are operating in the research context are not in scope. And the real exact definition of what we mean by that is given in the call text. And I've already said that the big target is to widen the HPC user base in Europe. So now coming to expectations. When I say expectations, what this should mean to you is look at these very carefully, because these are the points that you'll be judged against. So if we have an expectation, please try to meet that expectation. So we expect all the proposals to be aligned with the call objectives. We want you to explain and justify the business challenge and why you need HPC, either HPC systems or HPC advanced services. Explain and justify the expected business impact and the means for value creation. How will you benefit? How will your customers benefit? Define the specific objectives you had to address the business challenge and how that is reflected in the work plan. And involve the necessary parties required to efficiently execute the experiment and required to demonstrate the impact of the SME business challenge. We'll come back to that later, but supporting participants are only those participants who are absolutely necessary or justified to be able to support the main participant SME in achieving the goals. Define the resources you need to meet your objectives and all the associated costs. In particular, there is the hope or the expectation that the experiments can use the computing systems provided by HPC through their benchmarking development access system, or perhaps through similar national actions. And of course, those systems provided free of charge. So do consider using those and explain why you're not using it if you choose to do something else. It can well be the case that the national competence centres, which are executed under the EuroCC2 project, that those national competence centres may be able to help you with a selection of appropriate resources and the application process. But it should be noted that FFplus, the project, cannot provide computing resources to you. Data protection may be an issue depending on the type of proposal you're submitting, depending on the type of applications involved. It's up to you to declare issues that might impact proposed work and that you align with EU laws on data access, data protection. As I've said, it's really important for the project that we can develop and publish a set of business-oriented success stories, and these may be also not just in PDF or paper form, but also as videos, so multimedia. And we really need you to support the project to produce these business-oriented success stories. What we're not looking for is repetition of what's been done before, so please be complementary to what's been done in the past. So avoid duplication of specific activities. All the information about those prior projects is on the website or accessible by the FFplus website. The eligibility criteria are perhaps slightly more complicated than they were in the past. Organizations must have their head office either in an EU member state or in a country that is eligible to receive funding from the Digital Europe programme. So please look carefully at that. There are differences between Horizon Europe, Digital Europe. So your organization must come from a country that is eligible to receive Digital Europe funding. Individual persons are not considered organizations, so they're not eligible. I've already mentioned this main participant. It's the SME or startup that's new to use of HPC and whose business challenge is being addressed. It's the SME that defines the experiment. And such SMEs may participate in only one experiment. Where necessary, you can have supporting participants, and the supporting participant organizations are there to help the main participant complete the activities. I've already mentioned that participation in the innovation studies for generative AI development and the business experiments are mutually exclusive. So the SMEs, main participant SMEs, should only apply for one type of action. You may have actually two SMEs that have a similar related business challenge. That is also possible, but the application, the proposal should be submitted by the main participant or main participants. And justify the other supporting partners that you include. The maximum number of consortium partners is 5. For supporting participants, there are some restrictions, and the restriction imposed is that only engineering activities are eligible for funding. So activities such as business consultancy, marketing, administrative or non-engineering activities are not eligible for funding. Please make a note of that. And none of the FFplus beneficiaries are eligible to participate in the experiment. Funding conditions. The third parties that we're using this cascading funding, financial support for third parties, the official name, and all third parties in the experiments will receive 100% funding of incurred eligible direct costs, but no indirect costs or overheads will be funded. The maximum duration is 15 months. And the maximum budget for the experiment as a whole is 200,000. The maximum funding per organization is 150,000 euros. And that applies for supporting participants to all experiments in which they participate. So if a supporting organization is in multiple proposals, multiple experiments, that limit applies across all those experiments. And the expectation is that the major part of the funding is provided to the main participants, the main SMEs, and justify any deviations from that approach. We have a number of detailed restrictions or limitations on the type of budget that is eligible for funding, and restrictions on that. So obviously the personnel costs need to be commensurate with the work to be performed. That's quite normal. Depreciation costs for equipment, and only that equipment that's needed to actually perform the experiment. Costs for common use equipment, such as laptops, monitors, are not eligible. Travel needs to be justified in terms of the need for the travel to be able to perform the proposed experiment work plan. So yeah, travel as needed to be able to complete the experiment. Justify your compute resources. Ideally, you would be using your HPC systems, but if you decide not to do so, you should justify that decision. Costs of specialized software license for conducting the experiment are eligible, but not general purpose Office, MS Office software. And costs for acquiring any data sets that needed to perform the work are also eligible. The evaluation criteria for Core 1 Type 1 are the same as those you've seen before in the past participant projects. So impact, excellence, quality of the consortium resources, and impact scores twice. So to be more precise, each criteria carries a score from 0 to 5, 5 being top, and the criterion will have a weight of 2. And the rest have a weight of 1. So the total maximum score that you could possibly get will be 25 points. We apply a threshold of 3 to the first 3 criteria. So if you don't achieve a score of 3, you would be not eligible to be considered for funding. So you'd be under threshold. And when we do the final ranking of proposals, and there as a tie break, the priority used will be in the order of precedence: impact, excellence, quality of the consortium resources, and finally, if it's still tied, then the proposal will be selected which asks for the less funding. Coming then to proposal submission, there are a lot of details on the website and the call announcement document. Please have a look at that. Again, the submission deadline is September the 4th, 1700 Brussels time. Submissions are only in English and only in electronic form. And that means that you will have to upload 2 PDF files, a part B, which is admin, and part A, which is admin, part B is content. Maximum file size for each of those is 5 megabytes. A lot of details in the call announcement, but I want to highlight a couple of points. Please do not provide any spurious or extraneous information in part A, because we will reject such proposals without evaluation. And similarly, please stick to the page limit, excluding the cover pages, 10 pages excluding the cover pages, and make sure that the PDF you generate, in case this was done with some other tool, then we provide Word documents as templates, but you may choose to use something else. But please check the PDFs before you submit them. Finally, I showed you a picture where you can see that there are two submission areas, two proposal areas for the open call: business experiments, innovation studies. Both of them provide a lot of information. So for both of them, there is a call announcement and proposals guide, proposal templates as Word documents, an FAQ page, and a proposal evaluator checklist. That checklist is something where you can see the questions that we will ask of the experts that evaluate proposals. So if you can see the questions we ask them, these are the questions you need to answer in the proposal. And of course, on those pages, access to the proposal submission tool, which takes you from the FFplus website into a separate tool. We believe we've tried to answer all the possible questions within the material provided. Please read the core text very carefully. But if you still have questions about the call for business experiments, we have provided an email there that you can send to us, and we'll try and do our best to answer any questions you may have of a more generic nature, also about the process and about the meaning of the core text. But we cannot answer specific questions about your ideas for a proposal. We were not able to answer detailed questions about your specific proposal.